Hello, football fans. Welcome back to another episode of Hurdle the Line. I am in the host chair today. This is Chapman. We're glad to have you. And we have a smaller crew than normal. But with me today, I have supporting Detroit, the Lions. It's Fletch.
And then the Cleveland. Oli, then.
Oh, no, sorry. And then, of course, our resident Cleveland Browns fan and post and podcaster and tweeter, Oli. How are you guys doing today?
Very good, very good.
I believe you guys won a championship over the weekend, if I'm not mistaken.
No, we lost. No. The Brahmas lost the inaugural UFL championship. But obviously, when I picked them at the start of the season, knowing nothing about them or any of the other teams, and then did a little doodle and found out they were one of the worst teams the previous year in the previous version of the XFL. I didn't expect them to make the championship game, so
yeah,
just making it was great. It was a good season. Obviously, to lose 25-0 was not the best way to lose a championship game, but oh well. Next season there's always next season.
Listen, I've had a lovely weekend. I celebrated Father's Day with my daughter yesterday. And I get to talk.
Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there.
I get to talk football with my friends tonight. I am winning the championship that is life right now, so I'll take it.
There you go. Well, I have to put my hats off to you guys. I don't need football during the summer, but you guys going through the UFL and being on the chat talking about all the games the whole way through. I'm sorry your team lost, but there's always next year. So, but that's exciting. And it is summer. And as you guys can see, there's only three of us tonight. We have several of our teammates who have newborn babies, who are on fabulous vacations in undisclosed locations. So it's just going to be us three. We're going to do sort of a different kind of pod where we're just going to go through all the topics we have with our Break the Huddle, our news segment, and kind of chat through them. There's not a ton going on, but there are some interesting tidbits here, I think. And I'm going to start off breaking the huddle with the Trevor Lawrence contract. There's been a lot of hubbub about this. So just to give you the numbers here, it's a 5-year, $275 million deal, $142 million guaranteed. Lawrence is going to get about $55 a year. We all remember Trevor Lawrence coming out as the number one pick. He was considered a generational quarterback coming out of Clemson. He was a phenomenal college player, was definitely worth the number one pick. But since he's been in the NFL, it has been a roller coaster. Started off his career under Urban Meyer, which was a complete disaster. Did bounce back with Peterson coming in and stabilizing the Jaguars. Had a really good season, won a playoff game. And then last year was slightly more disappointing again. Not disappointing, but just, they didn't make the playoffs and they have a pretty expensive roster. So, what do you guys think about this contract? Would you have been excited if your team had paid Lawrence this money?
Yeah, yes and no, I suppose. I mean, Fletch is probably a good person to kick this off, obviously, with his team just signing Jared Goff to a similarly massive contract, which, not saying that was viewed as less deserving. I think a lot of people in the media and on social media and everything probably thought that Jared Goff deserved that money more than Trevor Lawrence deserved the deal he just got, but kind of in a similar boat of maybe was it too much for that player. So I suppose Fletch is probably a good person to kick us off with that one.
I mean, look, yeah, but Goff, I think. What's that? Actually, I'll start by saying I think one of the things with the Jaguars is, and Trevor Lawrence being the number one overall pick, is the thing with number one overall picks is they usually go to the worst situations. No number one overall pick, unless it's, I guess, Caleb Williams this year, who isn't going to the worst team in the NFL. They're going to a team that earned that pick through a trade. Very few first overall picks should be expected to have a good first year, especially at the quarterback position, just because of the position that the team's in. So I would never count, especially for first over those first 5 picks, I would never really count a quarterback's rookie year against them. for anything. What matters to me more is how do they keep going through that year, and how do they bounce back in the second year and keep going after they've probably been beaten up a lot. And I think Trevor Lawrence did that brilliantly. He's got a great mentality, and he's a very, very tough quarterback. And
I don't think nobody's questioning the tools and what he brings to the table. I think it's more just the on-field. He's getting a massive contract.
Well, yeah.
I guess at this point, you're basically paying for potential yet again. I think that might be where we're at.
I think it's kind of what I'm getting at is if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars and you've got someone with all the appropriate talent and the appropriate mentality, can you really afford to take a punt and maybe let them leave and walk out that building? Yes. Is it in general an overpay? Yes. But also when you're in the position of the Jaguars, he's won you a playoff game last year, and he was injured for a good chunk of this year. So you've got the quarterback. He's got all the appropriate tools to take you not only into the playoffs but to win and go on a playoff run. Don't let him leave the building.
Yeah, I agree. I completely, like, you had to pay. I'm not, I wouldn't dispute them signing him to the contract. They had to sign him to the contract. If you have a player that, like we've said, has the tools that he has, yes, he might not have the production yet in his career, but there's no denying the tools that he has. You're not going to let that player, like Fletch said, walk out the building. And I think this kind of alludes to what we talked about last week, and something we've talked about on quite a lot in previous episodes, is the way that the market is going at these positions. This is just what you have to do now. You have to pay this money. If you have this player that might not be the top of the crop at their position, but has the tools, has the potential to maybe do so, you have to pay this money for him. So yeah, I agree with Fletch. I mean, it's a lot of money, but you have to pay that amount of money for a starting quarterback and an above average starting quarterback at that.
Well, what's been brought up a lot is Daniel Jones and his contract that was given before the big season last year, which during he got hurt I believe 6 games in, and was not looking good. He's making 40 per season, and Lawrence is now making 55. So if you're talking about 15 million per year more, and you're getting, if you kind of look at the stats, and everybody can go check it out on their own, they're not too dissimilar. I think, again, we all believe Trevor Lawrence is a much more talented, a better in terms of just the eye test, and just he was a proven winner at Clemson, and he has played, he's looked the part. But Daniel Jones obviously didn't have the college career, but he did have a solid season, taking a very I would say below average Giants team into they made the playoffs that year, right? Yeah. So
yeah, they went 9-8.
Like you said, I think it opens up a bigger debate. And Ollie, we've talked about this a few times, but it's like, it's this quarter. It's like, what's the line? I was listening to Mike Lombardi on the GM Shuffle this morning, and he was saying, Minnesota decided that the line with Kirk Cousins was not worth the $45 million anymore, and my team did. They're in two different places, right? And so it'll be interesting to see if it is going to be worth it, So, and then, you have the Steelers who decided to go cheap on quarterback and think, let's take a gamble on if Russell Wilson's got anything in the tank, and we'll pay him nothing and bring in Justin Fields, obviously, for a very low draft pick. So yeah, we'll see, but it's interesting if we're going to get to a place where it's like 50 million or 50 whatever million, and then I guess Baker's making 40. Is Baker kind of pissed right now? I don't know.
I mean, yeah, I suppose it gets to a point where, though, if you're Jacksonville, and Trevor's never going to take 40. He's never going to take a deal close to them. So I suppose it's the way they look at it. Just pay that extra 15 million a year. They're going to just take that hit, if you know what I mean. And I think it is
40 is average now, right?
Yeah, 40 is like, good is actually like, saving money at the quarterback position nowadays. But you look at the Watson contract. Obviously, when that got signed 2 years ago, that was groundbreaking and massive, and one of the biggest contract we'd ever seen. And now he's the 8th highest quarterback, I believe. But I think it is quite interesting. I don't know if any of you I had a look at how they structured the contract. Jacksonville, and they have seemed to backload it quite a bit. So, and like you said, with the money that they're spending on the roster currently, that's probably the eye of why they've done that. They obviously think their window is now. They think their window is this year, next year. So the way that they've kind of structured that deal and kind of kicked a little bit of that back, something that, I mean, it's basically the same deal that Burrow got. Essentially, it's exactly the same total value, with just 4.5 million less in total guarantees. But then, not all contracts are created equally. They're both structured differently. And I think that is an interesting tidbit. Sorry.
But I think another thing I kind of want to get at though is, like, you're right. Not every contract is created equal, but also not every situation and scenario and franchise is created equal either. And again, I think if you want to kind of throw it back to the Jared Goff thing, is Jared Goff the best quarterback in the NFL? No. Is he up there in the number of where his contract is? Possibly not on talent alone, but also the man just won. I mean, Detroit won one playoff game in 60 years. The man won two. At what point you kind of got to say to yourself as a franchise, we can't let you leave the building because that's the position that we're in as a franchise. And
that's absolutely great, Fletch. He's worth the money that Detroit paid him for what he does in Detroit, and I think that's absolutely right. And I think that was a smart investment. Which is the same thing I think with our next topic is that T. Higgins was franchise tagged earlier this year or this offseason. He finally signed his tenure, and I think reports are as of today that instead of going with the franchise tag, he signed a 1-year deal, which probably benefit him and the team more than the franchise tag, which I think, Oli, you mentioned that's what they did with Saquon Barkley last year.
Yeah, obviously the Giants did it with Saquon last year. I think there was someone else last year. I think there was 2 players last year where their franchise tag was converted into a 1-year deal. I think they were both running back. Who was the other one? I can't remember. But Saquon Barkley, yeah, definitely they did it last year. And I suppose the point of
was it Pollard?
Yeah, I think it might have been. There was definitely another running back that did it as well. But obviously, I suppose the point, and it'll be the same reason, what the Giants did with Saquon last year. The player gets a slight raise, whether that's through just straight up a raise in terms of they add an extra 1 or 2 million onto the end of that salary, that base salary, or they do it through incentives, which obviously, leads into how they can now kind of, like we've talked about, manipulate that contract against the cap and kind of, like we always say with the funny money and how they do things like that, they can kind of move that money around with the signing bonuses and the incentives and things like that. So it benefits both teams from that point of view in terms of Bengals can now save money on the cap in terms of this year, instead of it just being a straight up, 21 million cap hit it'd have been, which is obviously fully guaranteed. They can now move that around, manipulate that. T gets his slight raise almost, and as I mentioned off the pod earlier, players when they sign the franchise tag only start getting paid when the season starts. So now he can get his money now with the signing bonus. Obviously, he can get his money up front today. As of signing, rather than having to wait until the season starts. So just something that benefits both parties for this season going forward. But I do think it's interesting going forward in the future.
And I think what's interesting is how important he is probably to the to the Bengals. And it's interesting to see him and Waddle now as the wide receiver 2s with 2 dominant elite wide receiver 1s on the same team still getting paid. And again, we may look at it and go, ooh, 21 for, I was looking at his stats. I know he was hurt last year, but 12 games last year, he had 656 yards, 42 catches for 656, and only 5 touchdowns. But I know he's an important cog there because you're not franchise tagging someone who's not.
Yeah.
And we know during that Super Bowl run how important he was a couple of years ago for the Bengals. It's interesting. I've just we're talking about. I'm thinking about San Francisco. I'm thinking about Miami. I'm thinking about the wide receivers up in Green Bay, who I couldn't name all of them. And I'm also thinking again about Cincinnati. You're talking about a lot of teams who have these two elite pass catchers, and how paying both of them is getting more. And the Chiefs don't. And the Chiefs won 2 World Series, I'm saying everything wrong today. 2 Super Bowls back to back. and they don't really
2 Olympic gold medals and everything.
That's the Patrick
Dude,
Mahomes.
it's
That's the
crazy.
Patrick Mahomes
It's
effect, I
crazy.
suppose, isn't it? That's the Patrick Mahomes.
I think
effect,
it's good
but-
defense.
True. If you have that good of a quarterback put him with a good defense, you don't really need anything else. At the end of the day, but I do think it is interesting going forward because this obviously means now that they're not going to extend him now. What was the deadline for the extension? I think it was the 14th of next month, which doesn't matter now anyway because obviously now signing the 1-year deal, you can't then obviously sign another deal on top of that. So. Will he be a free agent next year? Will they try and get something worked out? It's going to be something that's going to go on through the season. But I suppose as Bengal fans, they're just happy that all the holdouts, all that stuff's over. He's back to focus. It's obviously been reported that he's now going to be a full go at training camp. So they're probably happy in the first glance of it. But I think in the back of their heads, they probably are still thinking, this is going to be still a problem. Well, not a problem, but still something that is going to linger throughout the season.
Yeah.
Moving right along. Fletch, I know you're excited about this one because it's always a rite of passage through every offseason. It was announced that the cover of Madden 25 will be none other than Christian McCaffrey, our reigning offensive player of the year.
Yeah.
The great white hope of running back. And just an all-around awesome football player. Fletch, I think you've already pre-ordered? Have we? No? Maybe? Yes?
I'm still in that thing of whether I know for a fact I'm pre-ordering college football 25. And
you and me, brother.
I'm one of those. I'm that pessimistic person that a month before Madden, I'm folding my arms and ranting to my wife about how it's just the same game every year and they just change some of the players around. And then I buy it. So yes, I will be buying it. It's a given, but I will protest it for the next month, but still buy it anyway.
It'll
I
be
think
the same
Christian McCaffrey's
updated rosters.
And then a week later, I'm frustrated because it's the same game with updated rosters.
Even then, they didn't even update the rosters on PS4 this year, the whole season. So they might not even do that, depending on obviously what platform you play it on.
At the end of the day, the Lions get new jerseys in it, so I'm happy with that. I'll take that one again.
I always end up buying it, but I'm cheap, so I never buy it on first release or anything like that. I'll wait until the initial buzz passes down. They knock 20 quid off it on a sale, and I'll buy it then.
But Fletch, this will be the best Detroit Lions team in the history of Madden, if I'm not mistaken. So
probably. Yeah,
we're gonna have and for those of you who don't know, so I know on PS5 because this has been in the group chat a good bit, but they have a deal where you can get both deluxe versions of College 25 and Madden.
Yeah.
And Madden's like an extra $40 or 40 pounds here, and it's like because we're all getting college football. Every single one of us, we're all stoked about that game. And it's like but do we need the extra? I'm still on the fence too. I haven't decided yet. The Falcons will be trash. So I don't know.
I'm worried about because obviously we're all kind of crossing our fingers that the new college game is not going to be anything like Madden. So I'm kind of hesitant to buy Madden at the same time as well, because then if I do have them slight feelings like, is this a little bit too much like Madden just is, and then I'm playing Madden as well, I might have too close of a comparison, and it might misjudge my view.
At the end of the day, I think with college football, I've seen some of the additional extras they've put in. Not just in terms of the gameplay, but just like the Hawkeye wave and things like that have been added into the game. All the mascots are there. A lot of the walkout. I don't know if they could get certain licensing, because I was literally just before watching the Virginia Tech walkout with Enter Sandman by Metallica, and so I obviously might not be able to do that with music licensing and all that sort of stuff. But
Uga actually bites players on the sideline. It's amazing.
But I mean, all of that is cool, and it is kind of to dress it up. But at the end of the day, if the game is Madden and it's a disappointing actual gameplay product, none of that's really going to matter to me as much. I mean, obviously it's cool, but
but even if it is, it's got college uniforms and college football.
But you can just
football helmets.
You could just do that with mods, like everyone's been doing the last 10 years on PC anyway. But No, I'm a pessimistic. I'm hoping it is good. I'm hoping it is good.
And I think just to get back to the actual point we were making, I think Christian McCaffrey is very much a deserving player to be on the cover. I think it's the
first 49er, which is kind of surprising.
Really?
Yeah.
Tio was an Eagle.
Yeah, he's the only player that was active 49er when they were on the cover.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
I had heard
put Rice on it one time, right?
Yeah, I had heard someone. I know that when they do the deluxe version as well, sometimes they'll do a normal Madden cover start, and then they'll do like a deluxe version cover and a different player. So I'm still kind of holding out for Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm not gonna lie to you, but I think either way, Christian McCaffrey very much deserving of being the cover athlete on that.
I had to buy that extra version when they brought because the best Madden game of all time is definitely the Michael Vick one, and I still have my copy of it somewhere in a box. But
is that 6? So when Madden 6?
No. I think it's 04. I think it's 04. Yeah. It's I think it was the year he broke his leg. Ray Lewis broke his leg in a preseason
Madden
game.
curse, I suppose.
It was the Madden curse.
Madden 2004. Yeah, Madden 2004. Yep. You're right. I'm just going up.
Great game. But they did the 20th anniversary last year, so I ended up buying Madden last year but I bought it digitally on sale or something because they had. But yeah. All right, we're moving right along. Quickly, just wanted to cover a little more player news, which was the New York Jets starting quarterback Aaron Rodgers did not show up for mandatory minicamp. Do we care?
Normally, no. But it's just funny because it's the Jets, and they seem to handle anything to do with football activities terribly. So obviously he doesn't turn up. The media do like they do with any time a big player doesn't turn up. Oh, what's going on? They ask questions and things like that. Salah does his press conference and says they knew about it for a month or whatever. He had a planned something, absence that was something that was important to him, but he's inexcused. He should be here, and we expected him to be here, and he's not here, so he will be subject to fines. And it's just a classic, just Robert Saleh, Jets creating just a problem out of nothing, and just making it more of a story, and unwarranted attention to something that shouldn't normally deserve that amount of attention.
Welcome to the New York media, Ollie. Where you would have loved early 2000s and New York Yankees teams, and
this is what I mean. You'd think you'd be more smart. You'd think you'd be more smart. Like if you knew about it, then cool. Then say before, look, he's not going to be here. It's all been agreed upon. Cool. You know what I mean? You'd expect at this point. How long has he been there now? 3 years. You'd expect that he'd know by now that how the media are how they're going to go with things, and to just not, handle things as badly as he has.
I'm going to mark that one down as we don't care.
Oh, I know. He's probably on an ayahuasca trip anyway. Let's be honest.
I wish I was on an ayahuasca trip. A little bit of not great positive news, but Chiefs defensive lineman Isaiah Buggs has a second arrest of the offseason this week for domestic violence and burglary, which is two things we don't endorse on this podcast. I know he was an ex-chief and an ex-lion, Fletch. So I don't know if you have any insights here. And let me just say this: at what point, Andy Reid has multiple times in two different franchises has steered a ship where there's been unruly on and off field stuff going on. But at what point does this offseason sort of just start to feel ick for Chiefs?
I mean, look, I said the other day, I was like, is it me just paying more attention, or does it feel like there seems to be more off-season issues than most other seasons that I can remember, at least anyway? Isaiah Buggs, the most I can say about it was he was great for us a couple of years ago, and then last season there was a falling out, and he was doing all that cryptic crap on social media, that whole, you'll see, things change, feelings change, all that sort of stuff. And he was clearly, look, there was clearly something going on there. There was a character thing going on in the back that after a little while, Brad Holmes had clearly said, it's quite clear that the Lions had said, like, look, you were not putting up with this, and kind of let him go. None of that could obviously, a million players have that happen to them, a little bit of character concerns.
So did you cut him?
Necessarily.
Did the Lions cut him, did they?
Yeah, we cut him right at the end of the season, and then he went and found himself on the Chiefs practice squad. And I'm not like, having a little bit of character concerns or disagreements with your GM and head coach aren't a precursor to domestic violence in 99.9% of cases. But it was quite clear that there were some character concerns coming out about him then. Or there was clearly something not quite right with him and his character, whatnot, at that point in time. And it's just been a bit off to see. I think his agent came out a few weeks ago when the first arrest happened just to say, oh no, it's Tuscaloosa and the government trying to shut his business down and all that sort of stuff. But
he starved dogs.
I'm not buying it.
And that's
yeah.
the thing they say. So I have no sympathy for him. He'll be cut by the Chiefs. I mean, he's a fringe roster player anyway. He's probably, if he was going to make the roster, he'd have been at the back end of the spot. So
arrests aren't convictions, so I think we need to be careful there. But I would just say it's putting yourself in the position to be arrested twice when you're an NFL player is not a great move. But I mean, going back to the wider thing I'm saying is, the Chiefs feel like they're having a bit of a weird offseason in terms of their players and the vibes, as you will, coming off their second Super Bowl win in the last 2 years. I'm rooting for them to lose, obviously, just because I like new blood winning Super Bowls.
Getting boring.
Well, no, I mean the greatness of Mahomes is not boring, and the greatness of Kelsey is not boring. But it would be nice to see someone else. But I guess just how Andy Reid seems to be a master. Even after they won that first Super Bowl a few years ago, there was the stuff with his son right before it. That was the one they won, right? Or was that the one they lost? I can't remember. But
son was involved in it.
In a DUI, an accident. So there's always a lot going on Andy Reid teams. I remember famously him dealing with Terrell Owens during the Eagles years, and just granted, T.O. was more of a circus than it was T.O. always performed and was always great. So, he just was a circus to deal with off the field, but he was, the man on the field. But anyway, it's just interesting. I just, I think some of the, it's going to be, they're going for a three-peat. It's never been done in the NFL. And I think it'll be, this is not helpful, though. I know in a couple months when they get into, get into camp and everything, it'll probably just be water off a duck's back, but still, it's interesting.
I think clearly, because this, like I say, is something that follows Andy Reid around a little bit. It may be Andy Reid. Look, they're clearly drafted. There are going to be some of these players they at least knew about character concerns beforehand. Maybe I think Andy Reid possibly feels that being around someone like Andy Reid can help them, and he feels he can be able to help these men be better versions of themselves and maybe help them with these character concerns rather than cast them aside and say I'm not dealing with the character concerns. And
great,
I can't fault Andy Reid for that.
You look at someone like Tyreek Hill. I mean, for every example, there might be some cases where he's tried to do that and it hasn't quite worked out, and the person hasn't responded to that thing that he's given them, and they've gone that bad path. But you look at someone like Tyreek Hill. I mean, people forget the kind of character concerns he had coming in. That's why he fell so much in the draft, was all of the stuff that he had going on. Similar things that Bugs was involved with in domestic violence and things like that, and he took that chance on him, took him under his wing per se, and look at the success story we've gotten from that. Obviously, I'm not talking about him as his personal life. I know he's had obviously a few more incidents in that.
He got very successful sperm.
Yeah, but in terms, with his 10 children, but in terms of strictly on the field, they won a Super Bowl with him. He's become one of the best wide receivers of his generation. So that's one of those success stories of Andy Reid taking someone in.
Yeah, and sometimes the character concerns. I will just to preface. I don't have a specific example. That phrase can be used and it usually is with college students coming in the NFL quite to their detriment in a way that is unfair. I think a lot of times, yes, if you know, I was 20 years old at one point and did stupid stuff. And stuff, I look back on it was just because I was an idiot. And, granted, I didn't have the opportunity to possibly play in the NFL, and but I guess, again, going back to some of that, I think some of those labels get sort of generously put on by the media or other, and used against players. However, as a grown man, you can do things to not get arrested. Mm-hmm. There are very few incidences and, where I can be like, he does stuff, but you can usually, if you're pretty normal, can avoid being arrested. Now, again, these guys are still young and they still make bad decisions. But anyway, it's just interesting. There's a lot going on in the Chiefs, and it'll be interesting to see if they can,
One of the interesting bits there, though, is really quick. Is it's bad decisions with a lot of money to hand, and bad decisions while there's a lot of people looking at you, and rightly, I would say wrongly, a lot of people they're making the same mistakes that a lot of young people are making their age, but there's a lot more eyes on them, and because they've got a lot more money, the action is in itself bigger. For example, how many kids similar to the age of Rashee Rice have been known to speed over the limit, but because he's doing it in the cars that he's doing it in, with the media watching him the way it is, it's a bigger thing. I was not saying it's right or anything like that, but when you put young men like that with and give them a lot of money,
the media loves to focus on rich athletes and for better or worse, and celebrities in general, and tear them up and down. Like
they bring you up, they bring you up so they can tear you down, don't they?
It happens to me all the time.
Yeah.
So that's most of the news, but we are going to try something new here. I am going to take on the hat, the helmet. What are we going to call it? I am now going to be our resident NFL media consumer watchdog. I don't know what we're calling this yet, but we're gonna workshop it and keep working it. And I've got 3 little tidbits for all those who love the inside, sort of the what's going on in the actual TV business of the NFL. And for those of you who don't know, I work in TV and film, so that's why I took this section for myself. The first one is a pretty exciting one for Ollie specifically, because today, right before we got on, Hard Knocks in season was announced. And this year, it's going to be the AFC North, which is also referred to as
the hood of the NFL.
The hood of the NFL. Ollie, you're going to be excited about this. I can never say I did not. I can say I did not watch last year, which I think was the inaugural season of it.
Yeah, neither did I. Was it the
Dolphins?
Dolphins, yeah.
Is it Dolphins? I actually kind of want to go back and watch that possibly. I have been a big Hard Knocks fan for a long time, since the early days on HBO at home. But this will be interesting if it's like if it's part of the season where hopefully there will be division games. So we're going to be maybe, I don't know, that could be really interesting. And how do they, I guess teams, obviously the teams have final say over the edit, which is a big part of the show, but that could be really potentially interesting.
I mean, it'll be good. I mean, obviously, as we've talked about ad nauseum on this podcast, the NFC, the AFC North is the best division in football. Every team has a possibility, has a route to the Super Bowl, in my opinion. So, what better division to put the cameras on and kind of get that true sense of a division rivalry and a football season, an NFL season, than the AFC North. I think it will be interesting, like you said, to see how they do it. I didn't watch the first one they did last year, so I'm not entirely aware of how they kind of covered what parts of the team, what parts of the games throughout the week and kind of stuff like that. But it's exciting, obviously, as a fan of the Browns, as a fan of a team that's in the AFC North. It will be good to watch. I will be watching along, obviously, and hopefully it doesn't distract. Like they always say, with when you got the cameras around and the media stuff, it could be a distraction. I assume it wouldn't be, but just hopefully it's not.
Well, hopefully it'll be entertaining. I like the idea if it's a division and we get to see prep for division games and sort of then the aftermath of those. And I will say I'm a sucker for a Steelers. Sorry, I know you're gonna hit this all a Steelers Ravens game, but of old. Yeah, it'll be.
They're only 20, what, 30, nearly 30 years old. Come on.
Yeah. And then I like watching, and I'm a big fan of watching Joe Burrow. So it should be really, and hopefully I do like Nick Chubb too, which I've said many times, profess my love for Nick Chubb. So hopefully he'll be back and healthy
Yeah.
For these matchups soon. So
Um,
that's great. Also part of our media corner. Okay, is that there's a big lawsuit going on, and I know this probably will not be that interesting to our UK and Europe fans, but that the Sunday NFL ticket, which for years in America was run by DirecTV, which was basically our Sky, I could say, like it was our satellites, but you basically had to buy DirecTV in order to get all the NFL games. Well, there's a big lawsuit right now, basically about how you were paying all this premium dollars and the NFL keeps giving games away to other streaming services and other services where they're not going to exactly be able to get the full amount. But there's also, Fletch, I think you're a little more tuned into this than me, so I don't know if you have any other little tidbits on that.
Yeah, so one of the things I was talking about Sunday Ticket a few days ago with a friend of mine in the States who lives in Virginia. And one of the things we were talking about was like the price of Sunday Ticket is going up, of course, like most things are. But, it's...
And it's now with YouTube, just so everybody knows.
Yeah,
in America.
it's now with YouTube.
And it's actually a better service, I think, overall.
Well, yeah.
Everybody just... YouTube's done a better job with it.
But ESPN recently, it was discovered this week that ESPN threw it to the NFL to have single team tickets. So, if you were to say choose the Atlanta Falcons, you would only get Atlanta Falcons games, which would obviously bring down the cost for you, but you'd still be able to watch your team's games. And the NFL rejected it. Well, yeah, I've seen something similar on that. Yeah. The NFL rejected it and just said, no, we don't want to do that. But I was also talking to my friend in the States, and he was saying, look, he paid for it every year. It just kept getting more and more expensive. And they only covered the Sunday games, the 1 p.m. kickoffs and the 4:15, 4:10, 4:30 kickoffs on Eastern time. And if you are a fan of a crap team, it worked very similar, like you say, to Game Pass over here. If you're a fan of a crap team like Oli and I have been for years, where the NFL aren't giving you primetime games, so you're playing the 1 p.m. kickoffs, and on Sky, no one's choosing to watch the Lions on a Sunday at 1 p.m. out of those selections. So, your games were never blacked out on Game Pass. Game Pass was completely worth it. I got every game in a season, no matter what. Once your team gets a little bit better, the difference with Game Pass is we get the Thursday night, Sunday night, and Monday night games on Game Pass. You don't get that on DirecTV. And if your team's actually a successful team and wants to be played on primetime games, you're paying more to see your team less. Similar to if your team's doing well and you're chosen to play on Sky a lot, you then miss out by paying more for Game Pass.
Yeah, and I think more specifically, just sort of reading a little bit more about it, was that they're alleging, because this lawsuit's been sort of building for a number of years now, but they're alleging basically that Fox and CBS, who usually have the Sunday 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock games in America, or what we have 6 and the 9, or anyway, the 6 and the 10, whatever it is. They were in cahoots with the NFL to make sure, because the NFL controls the Sunday ticket, and they wanted to make sure the prices were inflated so that people would still watch the local broadcast, which is how CBS and Fox were making their money. So they didn't want to, because CBS and Fox is paying all this money for these packages of games, and then the NFL is then also selling these satellite rights so that everybody can watch whatever team everywhere. It's quite complicated. It'll be interesting to see how this goes up. So we'll keep an eye on that. And then one last little tidbit here. Reports are that Netflix is having trouble with trying to find a production team for its 2 Christmas Day games. You may remember last year, Amazon took over Thursday night. What Amazon did was make a deal with NBC NBC, who was doing Sunday Night Football, and their production team to come in and do Thursday night. And if you remember, I think everybody was quite happy, mostly except for Kirk, the awkwardness of Kirk Herbstreit and it was not Al, it was I forgot the guy's name. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But they did a great job. NBC did a great job with producing that with Amazon. So, and as most of you know, Netflix has really wanted to get into the sports game, but they're trying to do it in different ways, and they don't have a broadcast team, and you can't just creating one out of thin air for 2 games is quite difficult. So it'll be interesting to watch to see if they do pay somebody mega bucks to help them broadcast, or if they try to do something from scratch, which I think would be a mistake. I
just want it known to our listeners that we have put our names in the hat. We have put Hurdle the Line forward as a possible broadcast team.
Well, we put Chapman forward on the proviso that we did kind of tail along.
No, it's the whole team.
No, we don't have to word it like that. We don't have to talk about the semantics of it. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all going there. So at the end of the day, we're basically all invited. So
yeah, I'm doing sideline reporting.
So yeah, just keep an eye out on that, guys. Obviously, if you do see us on the Netflix Christmas Day streams, yeah, give us a shout out.
We don't break news on this. We just we tease it. So
yeah.
That is our still not named Media Corner segment, which we'll continue to work on throughout the year. And that ends our Break the Huddle section of our podcast. Now we're going to go into a little bit of what we're talking about going into the season. It's basically our mini camp for the NFL newbie. And what we're going to do here is just talk about a couple things. If this is, if you've got a friend who watched the Super Bowl last year, possibly, and was like, you know what, I'm going to watch this season. I kind of, help me out. Or if you're trying to convince somebody to come in, or if you yourself are just getting into the NFL here in the UK or in Europe, and you're trying to kind of figure out, how do I approach this? We've got some do's and don'ts, some suggestions, and just a few little anecdotes about how to start that season. So again, our mini camp for NFL newbies. And our first topic, Ollie's going to pick us up here, and you're going to talk a little bit about media consumption, how to get into the game, how to learn about the game, how to listen to the game.
Yeah, so at first I wanted to kind of take the view, because personally, when I got into the NFL, as I'm sure a lot of people do, you see the kind of mainstream stuff that that is out there, the ESPN stuff, the Fox stuff, and these kind of talking shows that you get with these broadcasters, and I kind of found them to not really be beneficial to learning about the NFL. It was more kind of focused on the storyline side of the NFL and the drama and everything like that. So at first I was going to say just avoid that entirely, but I don't think that is fair to say, because you can get some good stuff out of those kind of shows. So I think it's more just about making sure you diversify your listening and your consumption of media and NFL media. You should take advantage of the abundance of material and content that is out there with the new age, with internet and everything. There's so many good, whether that's independent channels or, like I said, channels that are associated, or
Hurdle the Line,
like Hurdle the Line. Obviously, this is the first place I would send you, but I think it's just important. There's loads of good YouTube channels. You think of things like Thinking Football, the QB School and things like that. And I think it's just important to. I think we're also, most people, if you're a football fan, previously, like if you're from the UK, listen to this, you're a football fan, you probably know about football YouTube channels. You probably know about the YouTubers that are involved in that scene. It's such a normal part of life now is media consumption and content creating and everything like that. So it's something that most people are already familiar with. So it's just translating that into the NFL, and I think it's just finding things that you enjoy, finding things that whether you like Chapman just said, Hurdle the Line. Obviously we all know that you love listening to us talk, but if you find other people that you enjoy listening to talk, or whether it's you just enjoy the engagement you get through that channel, whether it's the information you get through that channel, it doesn't really matter. I think it's just important that you consume the content, but in a diverse way, so you're not kind of just kind of one narrow-minded on one certain side of it, and you kind of get a full range of the NFL and the different views, and as well as all the different things that kind of make it up.
Yeah. One thing I want to kind of ask you on that, is there any, other than Hurdle the Line, obviously, are there any particular ones that you would recommend?
You see, the thing is, so I was just going to say, the thing is, for me, I'm quite lucky that obviously I'm a Browns fan. I got into the NFL as a Browns fan.
I won't call that lucky.
Yeah, well, whatever you want to call it. But I mean, lucky in a sense of I discovered a lot of really good Browns specific content. I mean, the Browns film room is basically what taught me football, and taught me, schemes and everything like that, and defenses and different things like that, and formations, everything. That's what taught me. And so I think it's just, like I said, take advantage. I mean, most teams have really good media, whether it's affiliated directly with the team or non-directly affiliated. Most teams have really good, media things around them that you can learn from. Like I said previously, just the YouTube. I think Thinking Football is a really good one. QB School is a good one if you're interested in that kind of nerdy side of it, and kind of the schemes and everything that goes into it.
And I think what we're talking about here, just so we can be a little more specific, is it's okay to like Pat McAfee, but you're not going to learn a lot about football. Or a specific team of Pat McAfee. And it's entertaining. There's a soap opera that is going on, which is the NFL, and we all like that part of it too. But like learning about the actual sport and the game and what's going on and the importance of those things, it's having a good digestive balance of that, and sort of learning the game and understanding it. And again, I still have a lot to continue to grow in them. Watched it my entire life, and I think it's just making sure you're eating your vegetables, and you're not just having ice cream every night with.
And I think it's important to do it on your terms as well, because you're only going to get into something so much if you're enjoying it yourself. So, and I think not even just YouTube and things like that, podcast as well. Not just video platform, audio platform. I mean, for me personally, all the I worked in a warehouse and where you could have earphones in all day doing a job that's a bit mundane, but when you've got something in your ear and you can listen to it all day, I could learn about the NFL and not even really know that I'm doing it almost, because it's just kind of part of my everyday routine. So I think it's just important to, like I said, diversify it and find those things, but do it in a way that suits you. So find the content creators that fit the things that you like. Don't just kind of feel forced to listen to whatever mainstream thing that everyone else is. Just find the stuff that you enjoy.
Well, one thing I was going to say as well, I like the analogy of I do quite like that analogy of eat your vegetables, don't eat ice cream, even though I don't agree with the analogy, always eat ice cream, don't eat vegetables. However, I think one thing that's important as well is like the whole kind of the Super Bowl, for example, is your baby food. It's the very palatable, very easy to take in. It's the big show. It's the two, probably mostly like the two best teams in the whole NFL. That's the easily palatable one to get you into it. But after a little while, you need to start eating certain other different types of food. But don't go straight in eating very hot and spicy and crunchy food straight off the bat. The worst thing most of you can do is, like you say, it's great to go watch Thinking Football, but I'd say get used to the game a little bit more and how it's played and worked, because the guy's great and the way he breaks down stuff. Me and Ollie have spoke about Thinking Football specifically before. But the last thing you want is to still not be quite sure what's going on with offense and defense, and having someone talking about a cover six Fangio and 3-man press coming off the weak side, etc., etc. That's too much. You're not going to get straight into it. So I think weaning yourself in, and it's difficult to find out what's palatable before you listen to it, but ease yourself into it. Don't run before you can walk with a lot of that content as well, because you're just going to get yourself flustered early on.
Personally, I was just going to say, personally, I wouldn't want to get people not listening to Hurdle the Line, but I think one of the best podcasts that does both a lot of fun and it covers the soap opera, but also will cover nuts and bolts football at a certain point and has a lot of great guests is around the NFL.
Yes.
Dan, Mark, and Greg are amazing. They come to London. They come to. I think they're going to Germany.
Big supporters of the UK NFL
Yeah,
scene.
yeah. They're big supporters of the international scene. I think if you're probably listening to this podcast, you're probably listening to them already. But those guys are great. I would also say probably I'm not sure how familiar the UK and the Europe audience is with Locked On, but there's a podcast group called Locked On, and they have for baseball, basketball, American football. Every team.
Yep.
You're a team.
I'm really lucky.
Day.
Shout out to Jeff from Locked On Browns.
Well, I'm trying to do a shout off to Aaron Freeman from Locked On Falcons, who is he's great, and we're really lucky to have Aaron because he knows his stuff about football, and I've learned a lot from him in my time. So that's a great network. And then I'd also say that if you like reading online, which I'm an old man and still like being online and reading stuff, SB Nation does a good job. We have the Falcoholic with the Falcons, and they have great people. They also have a podcast that's not related to the site anymore, which is a shame. But anyway,
I think
once you get your team,
just add on to that Bleacher Report as well. Not a lot of people do try to look down at Bleacher Report, but they do have some really good writers for their teams and journalists for their teams as well.
One thing I will add, one more as well, is the UK content produced. I'm not talking fan content, I'm talking official content on Sky Sports and whatnot. While for me 10 years on, or 10 or so years on, I can get a bit, well, there's not enough meat to it for me anymore. Getting into it for the first time, they are designing it for people who are flicking through Sky at 2 a.m. and just accidentally stumbling on it. They are designing that content for new people who are coming into the sport. So again, it's easily palatable. There's not all the big, scary, fancy words that you're going to learn 2 years down the line. It's going to be a bit more palatable there as well. So a lot of the UK official content is designed with brand new UK audiences in mind.
Nice. And moving on, learning in a fun way. Fletch, I think you have a great second tip for our NFL newcomers.
So anyone who's listened to the Sleep at Work podcast has heard me rave probably on every single episode that I love Madden as an early days entry level part to the sport, because what Madden will teach you those nuts and bolts of the game very, very, well, I say very quickly, but will teach you not just the rules of the game in the whole, you get 4 downs, within those 4 downs you've got to get to 10 yards. If you don't get to 10 yards within 3 downs, then you might want to punt it. I'm not talking about those kind of rules and the point systems. Obviously you'll get through that, but it's also just down to things like, what's the purpose of an offense? What's the purpose of a defense? What's the purpose of a wide receiver? What is the purpose of a running back? What does the O-line do? And different position groups. Why does this wide receiver run that way? And then 2 seconds later, when they try again, he runs a different way. One of the early ones for me was a bit like, as a running back would be handed the ball. I'm watching that first season and thinking, he's just looking for wherever's open. And actually, no, it's designed for him to run to the right-hand side or the left-hand side, which isn't something I was particularly aware of to start the game off. And it's something that I regularly tell people and ask my brother, because he's from that generation of playing video games, and very much a case of he can't do anything, but you give him an Xbox controller and tell him to do it, and then he can do it. Madden was a very easy way for him to get into it and get used to it, because he had a pad in his hand and he could learn as he was doing it.
Nice. I told this anecdote a couple of times, but my fiance, who had watched 2 different seasons from me, who's from London, originally had never watched the NFL before we started dating, and then one time I started playing Madden during the pandemic, and she was like blown away, because she was like, wait, so there's plays that go in the quarterback, like he doesn't just throw the ball to whomever, or he doesn't just decide this before. And I'm like, no. And then she like all the wheels started turning, and she's like, oh, this is like so much better of a game than I thought it was. So it can be really helpful and exciting. The third topic here that we were going to bring up for NFL newcomers is how to watch. And I just brought this up because I know there's a whole generation out there that kind of has grown up probably watching Red Zone first, and just sort of the highlight. And for those of you who don't know what the Red Zone is, the Red Zone is basically during a Sunday when there's multiple games being played, which is one of the marquee cool things about the NFL, where we have a kickoff at 6 o'clock here in GMT, and you'll have anywhere from 10 to 6 to 10 games going on at the same time. So lots of teams playing. The Red Zone will basically zip through all the games, and if a team is about to score or something exciting happens, they'll click to it, and you'll just get basically the highlights of the games as the game goes along.
Can I just say for our UK listeners, imagine it's Gillette Soccer Saturday, but for NFL, basically.
Yeah.
But even better, actually. I think he does a better job of showing the highlights than Gillette Soccer Saturday does.
I don't know how old Gillette Soccer Saturday is, but I know the Red Zone was like pretty revolutionary in American television sports because it was just like, it was great. However, I would definitely say that is not a great way to sort of learn the game. Like, it's much better to watch a game and listen to the commentary, and the NFL has very good commentators, and it gets you kind of more intimately involved with the players. I know that there's commercials, which I get people who love football with a capital F, don't love, but we as Americans, our brains have just been trained to watch commercials, so we don't even think about it. But it's a really fun way. So I would say, like, I personally, like, I'm a little bit crazy. Like, I like going to a place to watch it where I can have as many games going on at once and sort of zipping around. But if I'm at home, I have the Falcons on my main TV. I usually have Red Zone on an iPad, and then I have a computer, and I usually have the second game that I'm most interested in on that. I like to have as many screens as I can. But I don't know, guys, like, when you started, did you guys start with Red Zone and then move into games, or did you guys I think you already, what do you recommend, or how did you start consuming, I guess I should say?
Yeah, so I'm quite a passionate viewer when it comes to watching my sports teams. It's quite hard for me to focus on other things when my team's playing. That's just me as quite a rowdy fan, I suppose. But I mean, when I first got into it, there wasn't really well, how should I put it? I couldn't afford the NFL Game Pass when I first got into it, so it was quite scarce trying to watch Browns games and that. So yeah, I did only watch individual games that were on, whether that was Sky or was it Channel 4 back then at that point? Can't remember what they were on, but so it was individual games for me. So I think, like you said, that is important, because I think that does give you the best sense of the sport. That's the best way you're going to understand like we've kind of, been alluding to, if you want to kind of understand the sport more, that's the best way you will be able to do it. And I think Red Zone's something that is, yes, it's really fun to watch when you know the sport. But like you said, maybe when you're first getting into it, it might be a bit overwhelming. It might not quite give you the full picture almost of what goes on. You're kind of just seeing the single most exciting bits that are taken from that game. You don't really see what leads up to it. You don't see the kind of logistics that lead up to it, or the kind of everything that surrounded what went into that situation being that situation. So I would just kind of further your point, Chapman, as someone that kind of watched individual games before when I got into it.
You lose a lot of the strategy, and you also lose a lot of what maybe got a player to the part where they make a touchdown or they make a great defensive stop or whatever like that. So yeah, there's individual plays are great. It's just like, I used to love watching SportsCenter and watching the top 10 back in the day, and like just seeing, but you don't get a feel for the game as a whole, the strategy as a whole, it's really exciting and can be really fun. And just like a great football, capital F, game, even if it's 1-0 or something, it's just like the strategy of that whole game, you'll just miss if you only get to watch the goal, right? So,
yeah.
I mean, that's even with, a lot of people that only watch, well, not only watch, but the kind of gatekeepers of all 22, and the people that say you should watch, the truest form of watching it is the all 22 clips. But I'd even push back on that sometimes, that I do think the broadcast is important at providing context. That it could have been 100-mile-an-hour winds in that game. Unless you're seeing the flag at the time of the thing, you don't know that unless the broadcasts are talking about it. You don't know about the certain context that go into certain things. So I think the truest, best form to watch a game is in its broadcast format, its single game format.
I wanna add though as well, because I've always loved the analogy of Gillette Soccer Saturday, but for NFL, but also Red Zone shows the clips. So I would also kind of liken it to say Match of the Day, but for the NFL, because you're seeing the highlights.
Match of the Day, yeah.
But I think for me, it's a case of if I want someone to go, okay, that sport's not that it's not that bad. Okay, there's some exciting bits. I want them to watch Red Zone. If I want them to fall in love with the game and want to continue watching it, I want them to watch a game because I want them to see the strategy and everything. I think going straight into Red Zone, it can be quite overwhelming, and you're absolutely right. But also, what does that do? How are you going to go watch a full game when all you're used to is 30-yard pass, touchdown, 75-yard run, 30-yard pass? And I think getting used to the progression of the game and how a game moves is a lot better than just continuously watching highlights and big plays all the time.
Which I would just say two things. Watching with friends is always very exciting. And I prefer to watch my football with friends, which is why I have a group of friends here in London that I most every weekend watch with. None of us have the same team, so it's.
I think that's the best way though, because you kind of get that, you get that clearer view. You're not all biased towards your team. You kind of get that more, truer sense of conversation and debate.
And it never hurts to have a alcoholic beverage or two while you watch football.
Or herbal.
Whatever your case. We're not endorsing anything, but for those who like to participate, that can be fun. So those are some elements.
Caffeine and sugar for me.
Caffeine and sugar, just whatever your vice is, guys. Just stay healthy and safe.
Can I just finally just say before I suppose we're going to move off from this topic, but I will just say one thing as well. I mean, be unapologetic in your pursuit of knowledge and understanding of the game. Don't feel like someone's going to take the mickey out of you. Don't feel like someone's going to embarrass you almost for asking a silly question. If you have a question, ask it. It's a very welcoming community, especially the NFL UK community, as most of our listeners are probably involved in. It's such a welcoming community, as I said. So yeah, don't be afraid to ask questions. Just get involved, and I think that's kind of a big thing that people getting into the sport should take into it as well.
Seconded.
I mean, that is the great thing about the game is, someone like me who, like I've said, been watching my whole life. I still learn stuff. You're never gonna learn it all.
Yeah,
and it keeps evolving, which is why it's such a great game. So our little NFL mini camp, we're almost coming to a close, but just to go through the drills again really quick. We're saying for our NFL newcomers, be discerning about what you consume in terms of your learning knowledge and how you get into the game. Keep it fun, but also try to learn the games by podcasts, certain things, and YouTube, and obviously reading online. Madden is a great resource for just understanding sort of the fundamentals of how the positions work, how defense, offense, and special teams
getting
all
to
go.
know names as well.
Getting to know names, it's really fun. What's great about Madden is last year's Madden will always be on sale as soon as this year's Madden comes out. So if you don't want to fork out 60 pounds for the new Madden, you can always get the old one.
Buy Madden from 10 years ago because it's exactly the same goddamn game.
They'll have an updated roster on there you can download, so it'll be the same thing.
There you go. And then also in terms of watching, NFL Red Zone is great, but also try to watch full games and watch with friends because that'll really get you more into the spirit of what it's like. And finally, obviously, the most important thing is eventually, if you do fall in love with the NFL, you do fall in love with football, you got to pick a team, hopefully. And so tips for people who are non-Americans picking teams of American teams. So we don't have time to hear the whole stories. We'll do that, I'm sure, another podcast. But just really quickly, you both told me two really great little things of why you ended up picking your team, which was less about the team, but also more about the cities. So tell me about those really quick. Ollie, go first.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously for me, I've spoken about it on here before. As someone that got into Cleveland and Cleveland sports before I understood the NFL, it was quite easy for me. But I think it's just to kind of allude that to the point of how someone else would do it. Find a connection if you do have a connection to a city in America, whether that's your grandparent or your great great grandparent lived there or moved there, or maybe it's something as silly as their state color is your favorite color. It doesn't really matter. I think if you can find a connection that is something that you can then be passionate about and kind of put that passion into that sports team, that always helps. Someone like me that is, I'm sure our listeners know I'm quite passionate about the Browns. I'm also passionate about all my sports team. That's something that is just one of my traits, and I like to throw into that. And if you're similar to that, and like most people are, if you have that connection, it kind of helps, fuel that almost. So for me, it would just be if you can find a team that you can have a connection with, that's great. If not, create one.
I mean,
and Fletch, you told us a good story.
Yeah, I mean, well, for me, look, a lot of us, whether we grow up with football or not, whether we realize it or not, through the media and through the movies that we watch growing up, we see American football a lot. Though that'll be teams like the Miami Dolphins, if it's Ace Ventura, or
Cleveland Browns draft day.
Exactly. So, I think we will all have some sort of, whether it's a team you grew up kind of seeing in a film or a movie. For me, it wasn't even any of that. For me, it was, I grew up listening to a particular artist. I support the Detroit Lions. I'll give you a guess which artist that I'm white and I like rap music. Guess you which artist that was. I grew up listening
MGK.
to Eminem.
Oh.
Fuck off. I grew up listening to Eminem. Eminem introduced me to a lot of Detroit rap. I fell in love with Detroit rap, and that was way before I started supporting the Lions. For me, and then I just kept seeing patterns of an artist I met. I'm a sound engineer. I did a few gigs, and one of them I met, one of the nicest musician I've ever met was from Detroit. Things like that stuck with me, and then when it came to picking an NFL team, I just felt a gravitation towards the city of Detroit, and the further it got. I mean, great, I had a couple of players that I fell in love with at the time, but Dan from the Saint City and Me podcast before commented on the Asleep at Work Network question about it, and he said, pick a city you'd like to go to one day. My wife picked New Orleans Saints, sorry Chapman, because she's always wanted to go to New Orleans, and she's felt so that's a city that she's always wanted to go to and felt some form of a connection to, like you said. And I think, again, that's a great piece of advice if you'd like to go on holiday somewhere. And to quote Dan, no one wants to go to Cincinnati. Don't bother with the Bengals. But I mostly echo what Ollie was saying, though. Throughout whatever it is, there'll be a way that you feel connected to a city or to a people. It might be a direct connection. It might be indirect through a music that you like. But there'll always be, I think there'll be something that draws you in somewhere. And falling in love with a city and a team is a lot better than finding the most successful team, like, Patriots fans have.
I thought you were going to make a joke about the Miami Sharks and the Dallas Knights from Any Given Sunday, which is one of my favorite football movies. But well, I think that's great advice, and that's really amazing to hear. Like, it's not just about, oh, I like this player and he was on this team, or whatever. But there's real connections there. And my only advice would be, because I was sort of born with my team, so I didn't really get to choose. I'll admit it on the podcast. I did one time come home with a Dallas Cowboy thing in the middle of the 90s, only because like the Falcons sucked. And man, my entire, it was awful. Come back, Fletch, please. Anyway, I was like 11. I was like 11. And there's one picture of it, and my family still makes fun of me to this day for it. But anyway, I've told you my greatest sin, so now But I would say that my only suggestion would be you might fall in love really quickly with a team when you start watching, but I would say don't get married until the end of the season. Just wait. yes, there are some marriages that work out when I've heard lots of great stories about people meeting and getting married the first day they meet, or within a week or whatever, and those are great. But I would definitely just encourage you to go through a whole season and then pick your team. And I would also say, just because the team's won the Super Bowl multiple times doesn't mean they'll be good forever. And because the NFL also stands for not for long, so you never know.
Suck it, those Patriots fans that I mentioned 3 minutes ago.
And then I think Ollie, you and Fletch saying about the connections to the city. Yes, I think that's really important, because I think these NFL teams really represent a lot of the characters of the cities in America, as I always hear all the time, just massive. So you might want to do a little research, not just on the team, but on the city that you and some of the other teams. Now, you don't have to be like Ollie and also be fans of the other sports teams, because NFL is a gateway drug into the other American sports a lot of times. You don't have to do that. I'm telling you right now.
I'm lucky though because I know a lot of. Cleveland is. I know there's quite a few, but I'm lucky that obviously Cleveland has a team in all. Is it all 4 of the major sports?
Yes.
MLS, they got
three majors.
Yeah. So obviously they got a baseball team, they got a basketball team, they got an NFL team. So yes, I had that luxury of being able to, obviously, like you said, with the gateway. I was actually into the NBA probably more before I was into the NFL almost, but you kind of get into those other sports. And I was, like you said, I was lucky. So yeah, you don't have to, if you're a whatever fan of let's say you're a Kansas City Chiefs fan, that doesn't mean you have to. There's no Kansas basketball team. There's no Missouri basketball team. Whichever side of that border you want to go on, it's kind of an odd place for a team to be anyway. But you don't. Yeah, like you said, you don't have to keep that affiliation. You can translate it into other sports for different places.
There's lots of places to go vacation in the States. That's all I'm trying to say.
But maybe I would push back on that a little bit, though, because, Cleveland is not always the number one holiday destination. So if you are going to base it on your holidays, then let's maybe not do that, all right? Because you all want to be Browns fans.
But I think, actually speaking of someone who does support a team from a city that has all 4 of the top major sports in America, in the US, in baseball, basketball, hockey, and football, in Detroit, I did the same thing. I went all in on the city. And I was literally today on my way home, it kind of hit me that I was wearing a Detroit Tigers t-shirt with a Detroit Pistons hat and a Detroit Lions hoodie. The only one I won't do is Detroit Red Wings, because I have a hard line against wearing things that are significantly red. I think it's one thing though, but I think when you do feel, like I said, Ollie has a specific connection to the city, and I know I'm not from the city and I've not got family there, but I felt an affiliation to the people and to the city quite specifically before I fell in love with the team. So I think that just kind of, the teams came with me, if that makes sense. But you're absolutely right in the sense that if you fall in love with the sport, feel free to shop around. Makes your holidays.
I can promise you, Fletch, when you go to Detroit and you tell that story to anyone at a bar in Detroit, you hopefully probably won't pay for drinks at some point. So, because I love you. Well, that's going to wrap up our mini camp for newcomers. We're running long now. As we do with every episode of Hurdle the Line, we end with a question for our panel, our team. This is going to be the first non-NFL football question, only because some of you, for those of you who watch online, you can't really see, but on the pod, I'm wearing a shirt that says Atlanta, but it's actually a Hawks Atlanta shirt that I got at a Hawks game a few years back. And I say that because the Atlanta Hawks, for the second time in their history, and the first time since 1975, have the first pick in the NBA draft. Now, this is not going to be a draft question, thank goodness. But it is going to be an NBA question, because tonight the Celtics go for it's Game 5 NBA Finals, and the Celtics are going for what we like to call the gentleman's sweep against the Dallas Mavericks. And I'd like to get your picks. Does Luka send it to Game 6? Does Luka and Kyrie pull some magic out like they did last week, or does Boston at home in this thing and finally win that title that's eluded them since 2008?
So my head says Boston, but my heart says Dallas. I'm going to just say Dallas. I'm going to manifest it. I'm going for good vibes. I want Dallas to win. I want Luka to win. I think the whole basketball world wants Dallas to win. When Boston lose, the world wins. So, in the end of the day, I'm going to manifest it. I'm going to pick Luka and the Dallas Mavs to win tonight. Push it back down to Game 6 in Dallas.
Fletch has made a wardrobe change during your talk, Ollie. I'll go ahead and let him take the floor.
I'm going to say, you're wearing a basketball t-shirt, he's wearing a basketball the basketball jersey. I have to get into basketball mode. So, I think I'm not the biggest basketball fan of the group. I enjoy watching a game, and these are two brilliant basketball teams. I want to watch more of the basketball, so I'm inclined to want Dallas to win to keep great basketball going for an extra game or two.
Yeah.
So there is that, and also we have, I like gloating at people. I like rubbing things into people. So a Dallas Mavericks win would make the group chat a little bit sweeter for people like me who are shit,
and especially coming back from 3-0 as well. I mean, just a Dallas win tonight would be just at 3-1. You're still pretty cruising as you know, as a Celtics fan and as the Celtics. But if Dallas win tonight and it's 3-2 and you're going back to Dallas at 3-2, then it starts to get a bit squeaky bum time. And obviously, with no team ever coming back from 3-0 down, it was quite funny actually. So no teams ever come back from 3-0 down, but no teams ever won the NBA Finals when losing a game by more than 37 points in the series. So either way, history will be broken. I just hope the Mavs can pull it out. I hope Luka and Kyrie show up.
And despite it's really difficult to watch Luka be so successful, being that the Atlanta Hawks drafted him and then traded him away in the same evening, I agree with you. Nothing would make me happier than watching Boston lose at home and then have to go on the road again in Game 6. You know that Boston, they're going to be rowdy, ready to celebrate an NBA championship tonight. And if somehow Luka and his supporting cast can postpone that another night, it'd be great. But we'll see.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. I'm just hoping that whomever the Hawks pick next Sunday at 1 or possibly not can come in and help us actually.
Just a shame on the draft, really. I mean, we won't talk about it obviously here on the NFL podcast, but I'm sure we'll talk about it leading up to the
We'll save it for the spinoff summer NBA podcast.
Exactly.
We're going to do Sleep at Work, because you'll be really asleep at work. For staying up at 3 a.m.
Yeah.
I mean, it's about time we got to talk about Atlanta draft nightmares.
Well, we'll save that for the next one. Thank you, Fletch. Thank you, Ollie, for coming tonight. We hopefully will be back with a more stout team of Hurdle the Liners next week. Thank you so much for listening, and please follow us, give us a great rating, tell your friends about us. We are trying to grow this podcast over the summer so that we'll be rolling right in to the NFL season. We'll be talking about all the games each week, and we're just excited. Again, thanks so much for joining us, and don't forget to hurdle that line.
Hey.